You seem hungry. Good thing your table is ready with Saturday Omaha.
Saturday Omaha.
Eat this.
Hey, this is Dave with Saturday Omaha, and we are sitting in studio with Jacob and Jasmyn Wichart from Amateur Coffee here. Jacob and Jasmyn, how are you guys doing?
Hi, doing great.
Doing great.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for taking time out of your day through rush hour traffic, etc. And wow, the construction level around town at the moment is a little silly. So thank you for braving all that to be here. So
Yes, of course.
Well, good. So I first became acquainted with Amateur Coffee during the pandemic time frame. You guys were doing some super awesome curbside drop-off of coffee, which again, as stated, is kind of vital to my morning to make it that perfect morning. I became acquainted with your cold brew with oat milk, which is very, very delicious. And also with your reusable jar program, which is very, very cool. So your shop has a lot of aspects that maybe make it a little bit different. If somebody were to think of a lot of the different things that are available, you've kind of specialized in some areas and kind of tuned it to the way that you like to run your coffee shop, which I think is very cool. But I don't want to take all the words out of your mouth. So what makes Amateur Coffee special?
Okay, let's see. Well, Jake and I have both been in the coffee industry for a very long time, pretty much our entire adult lives.
Oh, wow.
So we kind of going into having our own coffee business really wanted to tweak the things that we didn't like about our previous experiences, like working in the industry. So we really value the values within specialty coffee, but straying from that, being vegan is a big core tenet that does really make us different than a lot of places. I want to say there's not a ton of specialty vegan coffee shops in the country. We're friends with a lot of them on Instagram, but I want to say there's probably less than 20. Other things that make our business, I think, unique, again, like you said, the reusable glass jar program, which that does make us pretty unique. But again, we also have a lot of other coffee shop friends online that do that or a similar program as well. So we kind of have a club for that.
Yeah.
What else makes us special?
I think I was going to say, I gestured to you, but I was just going to be like, you make it special.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Well, so I come more from the kind of coffee nerd background. So I've always just been hyper focused and fixated on learning about, where does coffee come from? Let's talk about the varieties. Let's, how can I understand the science better? Getting kind of really just deep dive into that aspect, into the brewing and the preparation.
Yeah.
And Jasmyn's always been right there alongside me in that journey. But Jasmyn's primarily an artist and a designer and she just has a great mind for creating ideas. And I think she just kind of breathes that life into our coffee business. And I just kind of let's just run at this together. I'll take the coffee side, and you take the lead in how we are going to kind of show ourselves to the world, and I think she does a really great job at kind of showcasing our personal values and ethics, and just trying to make it fun and not stuffy and too serious. We never want to come off be too serious, because it's kind of easy to do that in the food world.
Sure.
So I think we just like to come from a place of kind of fun and, honoring the things we care about, and just trying to put out a good product and do it in a way that makes us happy.
Speaking of the, geeky side of coffee, I think, as you said, so where do you get your beans? Where do they come from? And how does it turn into a cup of amateur coffee versus somebody else's coffee?
Good question. Basically, coffee comes from, basically in the range of the equator, you're right, on the globe. So wherever the sun is the hottest all year is kind of where coffee grows. So typically we'll find a few importers who work with farms directly and have those relationships, and then that allows us to kind of sample hundreds of coffees and pick the ones that we like the most. So a lot of it's just kind of who has the best, coffee to offer this time of year or this harvest, because sometimes it's not really consistent. So one year you might get a really, really great, harvest, and everyone will be like, oh, when's that coming back? But it's like it's nature and nurture, and sometimes it's one or the other, and climate change has also kind of affected that in the last handful of years. So regions are kind of changing their characteristics a little bit. Some things that once were there aren't there anymore. But essentially we just try to find coffees that are fun and exciting, honestly just what we like. So
lots of natural processes.
Yeah, we really like
Nice.
the kind of more sweet and fruity, and some of the more just kind of interesting kinds of coffee. But ultimately, it's just like it's based on our taste, and I feel like a lot of other roasters would agree with that. It's kind of like, what do I want to drink, and then how do, because like I feel like you got to be excited about the product you want to serve other people. So we're mostly just going based on that, and we'll find coffees. Ideally, we try to find ones that have enough information and traceability on each coffee. So it's just nice to know where it's coming from, and that I can kind of see the direct line from the farmer all the way back to us, through everything. So that's important to us. Not always possible, but when things kind of line up, we get that information and traceability right along with the flavor, and then basically we tell them we want these many bags, and they show up, and we start digging into the profiling aspect, and you just run a lot of test batches and kind of find a sweet spot, just like you'd cook something,
Sure.
You can kind of like lean more into like caramelized flavors, or try to just kind of show off what it already has. So yeah, there's kind of a lot of flexibility there. It's kind of a moving target a lot of times, but I guess the most basic way, I'm trying to make the coffee come forward the best I can make it, and then Jasmyn and I we come together and do this kind of fun creative brainstorming session. I don't know if you want to talk about like how we make our bags and the art and everything.
So we'll typically, once we've kind of like dialed in like which coffees we're like bringing into the space, we'll do a cupping or 2 or 3 and kind of just decide like what flavor profile that we really want to lean into. Because there's like sometimes notes will come up that will be like, oh, maybe we don't want to highlight that as much. We want to highlight this like story about it. I think like a good example would be like recently we got an El Salvador that we just released, and we're calling it popcorn ceiling. And the reason I bring this up is the reason I bring this up is because Jake had informed me that typically like popcorn is like a defect note in coffee, but in this particular coffee, when I had tasted it, we were like, oh, this tastes like a caramelized like caramel popcorn.
Ooh.
Like like you would get in the Boy Scout bins or tins or whatever.
Yeah.
And it had like a notes of like Nutter Buddy, and what else was in there? Just like these really yummy notes that we wanted to highlight. And so when you can focus that energy into that, then you can create a whole story for it. And then the art just kind of follows that, because you're like, what is the vibe of this? Like, how does this present itself? And then I really think that's like when it comes to that final, like once it's on the shelf and people are looking and they're like, which one should I get? And they're like so excited, but it's like, which one calls to you? Which one are you attracted to? And then people usually are like, this one. And then they end up loving it because they liked the art that went along with it. But yes, I do all the art for that. I should have said that too. But so yeah, that's kind of the process. Typically it takes a little bit of time from when we first like start tasting the coffees to when it's finally out on the shelf. But it's such a fun process.
So you're doing all the art and you're both tasting those coffees together to kind of decide. That's interesting because like when writing a song, it's always curious. Sometimes it's like, okay, does the music come first and then do you add the lyrics, or do you write the lyrics first and then you find the music for it? So the creative process in both taste as well as art design and everything, and all in-house. So you're in this case, you're not sending out to a marketing firm or anything like that says, draw us a picture for a coffee. This is like, hey, we tasted it and this is what Amateur Coffee thinks that this is. And that's very cool.
Yeah, it's really funny. You mentioned songwriting. I had personal experience from that too. But yeah, it's for me, it is always the music first. So yeah, I think I'm always inspired by what's there, and like, how can we make more of what's here? You know what I mean? I feel like, and I feel like I think that's definitely an interesting thing to kind of think about. But I feel like we very much kind of treat our art and our work the same way. It's like, how can we just bring more of what's there out of it? And I definitely think having like the art and the story or the idea, and sometimes they can be really kind of fun or cheesy or
Sure.
or we're going off of kind of like harebrained ideas, but I think it always just helps add personality or give the coffee an opportunity to kind of show the personality they have, because I find packaging can be lackluster a little bit in coffee, and it's just kind of like you're analyzing the information. Okay, well, I think I like coffee from Wheeler, Columbia, or I think I like this area of this place, but it's kind of like we try to like express the flavor through the art in this kind of weird way, but I think it works really good.
I have some things to add to this.
Yeah.
Like if we want to get more into like how that started, like
Sure.
how we started doing that.
Please.
So I guess like as we were like starting Amateur Coffee, I want to say it was like 2016, the beginning of 2016 was when I started like coming up with what we wanted to do for our packaging. We started with like farmers markets and wholesale accounts. Like we literally just had our roasting facility. So there was a huge focus on making sure that like our bags of coffee were like wanted, like so that they were, I don't know a good word for that, but so that they were like
like eye-catching kind of?
yes, thank you. Like
Somebody walks by like, ooh, I need that.
yes, yeah, to try to get attention, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I have a history of like design, like graphic design, and I've always loved drawing. And one night I was just like, hey, because I had an adult coloring book, not like an adult coloring book, like not dirty. It was just
Sure.
like a coloring book.
Coloring
Yes.
book for grown-ups.
No, but it wasn't
Yes.
like, it wasn't dirty. It was like, it had like rainbows and mountains. It was just for adults. It was like, color me happy. And I was like, oh, like, what if we just made our coffee bags look like a coloring book?
Oh, cool. I like that aspect because you're right. The color palette you use on the bags and things, they are not bland in any way. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, what do you think? Like, would that be okay? And then Jake was like, yeah, let's go with it. Let's try it. And so then I worked on our first 4 coffee bags, which were, like our house blend. And we had a campfire, which was that Nicaraguan coffee.
Yep.
It was purple and had like a little tent on it. And yeah, then that's kind of like how we got our start, was just that. And then we just kept going.
I remember we bought a few sample bags, and we'd roasted some coffee, and we're like, let's go to FedEx, and we like got printed them off and like glued them onto the bag, and it was just like, there it is. It was just such a perfect moment, and honestly, we haven't really changed the format at all since the beginning. We're just like, this works, let's roll with this.
And I wanted to do that because Jake is such a nerd and will get so like he'll deep dive into this information about coffee, and I find that that's just so commonplace within specialty coffee. And for me, on the kind of like not on the outside, but I saw it as like from a guest perspective, and I was like, like if I were looking at this and I didn't know what any of this meant, like what does elevation mean? What does like the altitude mean? What does this like varietal mean? Like what does that mean? And so I wanted to kind of help translate that like really nerdy information into a way that would be palatable for like the average person.
Oh, cool.
Like kind of like tone down that jargon.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like why it's like, okay, so here's the basic information, but look at the pretty picture.
We also like honor that information too. Like it's like there's a block of text. It's like if you're interested enough to go past the picture, here's the the text where you can actually learn a bit more. And usually there's some funny kind of remarks or ideas or puns or just sort of like interesting little tidbits Jasmine will add in there. But
because coffee can be pretentious, and I wanted to not be pretentious.
Awesome. And I'm assuming, Jasmine, that you also do the jar lids as well.
Correct. Yes, I do.
The thing with Amateur, when you get a cup of coffee, what I kind of dig about it is you see the top of that jar. It's fun. It's got a little bit of information on there about the program, but there's a nice illustration on there as well. And then the coffee within the vessel for which you are given is also interesting. So you kind of get this amateur experience, if you will, which is very, very cool. And then also the little koozies that you guys have for the hot coffee jars are adorable. They're tiny and cute. So.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's fun. It's been fun to kind of see it evolve and be able to like have more of that like creativity, because we started with blank koozies. So yeah, it's been fun to just like see it all become more like customized so that people connect, like everyone's faces light up. It makes me so happy. I love seeing like new guests come in, or people who come all the time and like, oh my gosh, today I got a puppy on my lid, and they're just like so cute. Like they're with their friends, they want to take pictures of it. They're like, what did you get? And it's just like makes my heart so warm, and they don't even know that I did it. So it's like kind of fun that I just get to watch like
The reaction. Oh my gosh, that's cool.
Yeah.
How often do you have to roast coffee to keep the shop going?
We roast, as in I roast, it's basically a couple days a week. So yeah, that's every week keeps, the flow going. And we've got our, wholesale clients that we also provide coffee to as well. But yeah, weekly roasts, we kind of try to keep back stock on certain things. Some items like to be brewed fresher versus, after a little bit more time. So we try to keep the coffee coming. And yeah, I think we've been roasting every week for, over 6 years now. So yeah.
Wow.
That's pretty wild.
How heavy of a bag or whatever can you roast at one time? Give or take a little bit. I'm just curious. I've never roasted
about,
coffee.
We have a 10 kilo roaster now. We started on a 1 kilo. That was fun.
2.2 pounds.
Yeah, that's when we were serving Bella's pumpkin patch at that time. That was not fun.
Oh
but,
yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
It's a
So
tiny
much
roaster
coffee.
And,
yeah.
it's like
It took
24
me
by
like
7.
Yes.
2 days.
Oh.
But that's what inspired us to get to grow
larger
into a
one.
bigger roaster to make it more manageable. But yeah, let's see.
Yeah, we
it's
went
like 50
from
pounds and
No, it's more
hour?
like that makes
Okay.
about sense. But yeah, but our previous roaster was a 5 kilo, so about 10 pounds a batch. Now I can comfortably do about 16, 18 pounds and not be completely like maxed out, have some headroom, which is nice because if you completely fill the thing, the heat transfer doesn't work as well. So there's more flexibility there. I can't do the super tiny batches anymore, but
Oh, sure.
we have a sample roaster that's dedicated and does 50 grams, so it's like way smaller.
wow.
Yeah. So that's how we sample all those coffees, right?
Is that just like a match to do that small amount?
No, it's this little thing. It's called Nikawa, and they're pretty pricey, but it even has an app that goes with it, and you can track and share profiles with people all over the country or all over the world.
Wow.
And kind of and you have to kind of translate those roasts from the 50 grams to like 18-pound batches. It's a little bit different, but yeah, it's nice having the option to do more or much less.
So if you roast something on that small little roaster, what adjustments, if any, do you have to make when moving up to that 18 pounds or that bigger roast? What changes, or does anything change?
Yeah, so it's just kind of like the power it has, if that makes
Okay.
sense. So it's like the little roaster has some convection going on, so there's actually a fan that's like sucking air. And then the same thing with the larger machine too. So there's the air component, and then there's the heat. And our larger production roaster works on gas flame. So
Oh, wow, okay.
And there's a drum that spins so many RPMs a minute. So and those can all be dialed in, and how much air you want, just kind of like those things. And then we've got control over gas. But the little roaster, it's actually kind of it's an air roaster. Technically. So it's got like a heating element, and then the air passes through that heating element and heats up the coffee that way. And I find that like this little roaster just makes everything taste awesome. So it's like, I can't get too zealous or, excited about something. Like it really has to blow me away when I roast on this thing.
Yeah.
For me to go, okay, like we're going to invest, all that money and ship it over here and everything. So it's kind of hard though. Sometimes to be honest, I can't replicate it perfectly. It's like, I'm sure with baking, it's like everyone's home oven is like a different story, You try to go to your friend's house or your folks, the holidays, and you're like, this is what I normally do. Like I've tried baking bread at my folks' house, and I was like, nope, not hot enough. Your oven just doesn't go hot enough. You know what I mean? Just to get the kind of results you want. So it's sort of a lot of those things. It's just kind of like a environmental thing too, and the weather will change because I've got exhaust coming out of the roaster, which is going outside, and sometimes there's pressure being pushed in, and the moisture, humidity, barometric pressure. It's kind of like, I don't know, you have to be one with your environment, understand kind of like what does it look like? And I'm not always on it, but it's just like you kind of have to make little adjustments even throughout the day too, to kind of like keep the consistency there. But we have software to track all of that, and I'm upgrading to a nicer one that allows me to take more data, which is super helpful. But yeah, it's kind of tricky, but you do your best. And a lot of I guess the biggest thing though, it's like stick to your fundamentals, understand the ratio or percentage of time spent, in the roast at its different points. There's like, you have the drying point where you're just wicking away excess moisture from the coffee. The next one is the Maillard reaction starts to happen. So your sugar browning, cooking reaction starts to happen, and you see like browning and kind of yellowing of the coffee. And then after that, you'll lead into kind of like the finishing point. They call it first crack. So and that's where the coffee starts popping like popcorn almost. Ooh. So all that energy and heat and steam starts creating this exothermic reaction where it just starts popping and cracking, and the beans expand, they go like twice their original size.
Oh, wow.
So they get bigger, and and that's kind of that's the exciting moment where I'm, as long as I've set up my roast properly with enough heat and kind of planned it out, and you've got to like turn your heat down just enough before you finish. It's kind of like, I've heard the analogy of like taking your boat to shore. You want enough energy to get to the shore, right?
but not to end up in the park.
Exactly. So that's kind of exactly what it is, but with heat. So you're kind of turning it down as you go, but starting with enough energy. And then that's where all the interesting kind of flavors start to develop, though. If you stop it early, it just tastes kind of like not like anything good, like vegetal kind of, green beans, like,
more plant, less coffee.
Yes. Yeah. But, like food, when you cook stuff nice and hot and, get a good, sear on your veggies or whatever it is, you start to create, those interesting dynamic flavors. But, you can kind of smell as you go, and, and I can kind of like pick out when certain things are happening in the process. I'm like, oh, I smell the acidity right here. Yeah. And this can kind of like translate this way. And then that kind of gives me an indicator of how long I need to kind of like be in that area, if I need to slow down or speed up a little bit.
How hot do you roast a coffee bean at?
400 degrees-ish. You start like, you want to heat your roaster up nice and hot. All the metal needs to be nice and hot, and there's sort of this like heating phase in between batches. You kind of want to let them coast at the temperature you're wanting to kind of like, get the coffee started at, because as soon as it drops in, all of the heat's going to get pulled out of the machine into the coffee. So sort of like the soaking process. And then you're adding heat through the drum, from the drum surface, and then from the air that like it's being heated up from the actual airflow system, right? The big fan. 400, not much higher than that. It's really like a couple more degrees is all you get, at least for what we like to do. I don't like to go past a certain point, like 10 degrees more, and like you can really go from 400 to 410 can be a huge difference, and even the coffee may even look the same. From like a few different degrees, and you could have identical looking coffee and have them taste nothing alike, or be significantly different. Where you'd be like, oh, this one's muted, or this one tastes more acidic, and some of that has to do with like how fast I'm actually like, if I'm like just cranking the heat and trying to get it out really fast, it's gonna like bring out more intense flavors. Or if it's slower, you can kind of like mellow out some of that intensity, and you can kind of tailor each batch to fit the kind of brewing method. So espresso can be kind of like intense, since you're brewing, the same amount of coffee you'd put in like, a large cup of coffee into this, like almost like less than 2 ounce to 2 ounce, drink. So all those flavors can get super intense. But you can kind of roast it in a way to kind of soften some of that, or make it more apparent. So and I don't always know. It's really just like trial and error. It's just kind of like, this is what happened when I did my normal, like this is the normal recipe situation, and then I'll come back and like, well, let's pull back. Let's go shorter or longer, and sometimes the temperature target can change depending on the coffee too. So they all kind of react differently to it.
So Jasmyn, so you both are involved in the tasting process when these get roasted, and especially when you have something new, because you have yet to create art for that. For maybe one of the most recent designs that you had, can you recall any flavors or attributes of that coffee? We talked about the popcorn ceiling one, of course, but any others where there was like, this is kind of what this inspired me to paint or draw because of this flavor or this aspect of coffee?
Yeah, of course. The one that like really comes to mind is probably like the Papua New Guinea like the date night. We called it date night. And as we were tasting it, it was on a day that one of our baristas, Drew, was working. So we were also kind of like, hey, like, come taste this. And we were like, okay, like, don't say it out loud, because you don't want to influence each other when you're like talking about notes. So that way you can kind of compare. But what we had kind of all come to the conclusion of was that it had like notes of like tannic and like red wine and like dates even. So kind of like a pun there. But
nice.
What else was in there? Like, it just like really kind of fit that vibe. So we're like, let's call it date night. And so that kind of just unfolded into like a cute, like evening picnic type of vibe with like, just like cute, like it looked really lovey. And there was just like some wine glasses on this little like picnic. And it's really cute, but it's just like, that's kind of how the process goes, is like, what does this feel like? And that way I can kind of help translate that into what I kind of want the viewer to maybe feel as they're looking at it. They're like, this is the kind of energy I want. This is the coffee for me. You know?
Cool. Yeah, and I wonder too, you know, if somebody looks at that bag of coffee before they drink it too, maybe that helps them zero in on the notes that they're tasting just a little bit. That's super cool. I love that process.
Yeah. With like, okay, it's very nerdy because I even know like what parts of your tongue are going to like pick up on different types of notes. So it's like you want to focus on like notes that are going to be like, okay, what is on the tip of your tongue? What's on the sides? What's on like the big like flatness of your tongue? What's like the aftertaste? Like what's that finish? And so like that's kind of like, we'll kind of tend to pick like one for each of those to kind of create the full experience.
Very cool.
Yes.
And sometimes it can be like, is this grape or is this like plum or something? You know what I mean? And sometimes you're kind of having to pick because, you know, I mean, all fruit is you know, all things in nature, like, you know, it's all related on some point, right? Because all the ingredients that, you know, our world makes up, right? You know, a strawberry from a blueberry, right? It's all made up the same stuff. So like the acids chemically, so it's all kind of this melting, you know, kind of pot of flavors and stuff. So it's always kind of tricky, but we have to kind of take a creative direction with it sometimes. So
yes, like we have a new Kenya that we just got. So I'm currently in the process of getting that like art created, and here's kind of where we had to make a decision like that, where we were like, this kind of tastes like grapefruit, but if you like kind of shifted it where you leaned into a different, like it tasted like chocolatey, like a truffle, we were like, so that bitterness could also be kind of like perceived as a dark chocolate bitterness instead of that grapefruit. And then we noticed that if we got our headspace in that, it tasted more like orange with that. Like it was like orange and dark chocolate.
Ooh, good combo.
Yeah, or grapefruit. Like which do we want like people to focus on? Because you can kind of like, it's like an optical illusion, but like a palate illusion. Like which one do you want to lean into? We're like this, and the aftertaste had kind of like that little bit of dryness that felt like a truffle.
It's like that, you know how grapefruit, it has a little bit of that bitterness, but it was definitely like, this is citrus, undoubtedly, like we're tasting that. But there's that little bit of like, you know, citrus, grapefruit bitterness. But at the same time, when we started to like taste the chocolatey notes, as it kind of cooled off, and we, you know, like there's sort of that aftertaste you get, the finish on the coffee. Yeah. Had lots of chocolate, milk chocolate, kind of truffly notes. And we're like, that bitterness plays like perfectly into like kind of a cacao, you know, like a raw cacao flavor. Yeah. So it's kind of like, you know, we can sort of choose what we want to like focus on in each coffee. And I think whatever is the most compelling or like thing that makes us the most excited is kind of what we go with. And sometimes we disagree, but like I think we always end up like finding the sweet spot where it kind of like it shines the most is kind of what's focused on, I guess.
So besides the new ones, so there's some seasonality and you know, what's available, what's the climate producing, etc. Are there any beans that you consistently have, or is it that because it's such a small batch that you are rotation is necessary? Yes and no.
Okay,
I like it.
We have our like bread and butter coffees, and those are going to be the ones that, you know, make up most of our like espresso, like our espresso blend, house blend. Some of those ones that we're making so much of it, right? That we really need that consistency. Yeah. And luckily, some origins harvest more in the year than other places. So like Brazil, for instance, has 2 harvest seasons. So it's literally, you know, I think it's just so sunny there all year round that like they just get more. And same goes for like Ethiopia, you know, just different places have kind of different harvest seasons. So, but the farms we do work with, super consistent. So that's really cool. And it kind of, the flavor will change. I'm like, oh, these bags taste like the bags we had this last season, right? And we'll get kind of a different flavor profile. But I think we currently share between 2 farmers within a similar like cooperative.
Okay.
So like it's just kind of, we're getting one or the other this time of year, and but they're both, same style, they're the same process, and they're packed, like the same way and everything. So, yeah. So, and there's that, and that kind of stays the same. And I make adjustments throughout the year, but those are pretty consistent all year round. However, when we're like looking for these really kind of fun feature coffees, those are going to be more like one-off. Like we're buying 2 bags of this and that's it. Probably will never have it again. And those are more, small time farms where they're not producing nearly as much. Whereas like, our bread and butter coffees, they're just, they've got, thousands of these bags. Their farms are huge, and they just have more infrastructure and stuff. So, but when we're looking for the variety and the interesting coffees, we're definitely looking for those kind of limited quantity. And that's kind of like, honestly, being a small roaster, that's like what we have to offer, because larger companies can't afford to
2 bags.
Right. Yeah. They're not going to waste time profiling just 2 bags for what, like one day, if like a 10 seconds of a day or something, you know what I mean? Where for us, you're like, oh, we can really dial in like this unique experience. Just like in wine, there's like terroir, right? And it's like, we can actually highlight this very specific location, right? I mean, we can tell you the name of, the farmer, and the varieties, if they're heirloom varieties, or if they're like wild varieties, or the farmer is a scientist, and he's worked on developing this specific variety in this location, which has never been done before, things like that. So it's really kind of fun to see the experimentation on that end. So
from a country aspect, what are some countries, or maybe some, that I might not expect? You mentioned Brazil, Ethiopia. Where from whence also do your beans hail?
Everywhere, mostly, I guess. So we can start from, let's see here. We've got, Brazilian, we've got Colombian, Guatemalan, Nicaraguan, El Salvador, a lot of Latin American, and like I really love Central American coffees too. But Africa, Indonesia, we have Papua New Guinea, and we have a Java as well. So it's like you can get coffee from a lot of places. Just like I said before, though, it's between the Tropic of Cancer and Capricorn. That's the coffee belt, right? Anywhere that's hot enough there and has the right climate enough, and the will to grow coffee, it's grown there typically. So
you can take a world tour within your different cups
absolutely
of coffee.
And it's wild too. Sometimes you're like, you can just tell like, oh, this totally, like, I can usually right off the bat know if a coffee has been grown like in Indonesia, for instance. Like, oh, there's always this sort of interesting constant there. But there's so much variety within each region too, because it can taste different from like 1 hectare over here to the one over there. It can just taste completely different. So I don't know. It's kind of a wide variety of even within the specific region. So it's sort of hard to be like, this coffee always tastes like this, but you can kind of like get some general kind of like indicators that you're tasting coffee from that region.
The plants themselves, are they different genus, species of plant there? How much of that is the terroir, the land, the soil, the minerals? Now you got me really curious about coffee plants and how they're maybe different from one country to another.
Yeah, so as far as like the coffee plant goes, there's just Arabica is coffee. If it's not Arabica, it's not coffee. However, there are ancestors, of the coffee plant too. But there's also a sort of relative called Robusta, which is pretty popular in like Italian espresso blends, or in like more commodity coffees where they're trying to cut costs and just kind of like provide more for the value.
Yeah, it's more closely related to the geranium plant than it is to coffee. Yeah, but it is very common for people to drink Robusta. Yes,
especially in. And I feel like Vietnamese coffee tends to like use quite a bit of that, but I think it's just an abundant crop that they grow. Sure. So it's an export for them. So you'll see it just kind of depends. It's less prevalent now. I think there's more awareness around it, and people are like, I want to drink real coffee now. And now you'll see, labeled 100% Arabica, and it's like, great. Now you're 100% coffee.
And a big difference too, like to note between those two, which is like what we commonly drink in America. Well, and the world, I should say in the world, that's what we drink. Robusta and Arabica is like the elevation as well.
Oh.
And so Arabica is at a higher elevation is where that grows. And so because of that, it's just more hardy, if that makes sense, because it's had to with survive like harsher circumstances.
Okay.
And that's why it's also like it's harder to get because it's also just like higher up. So it's interesting. Like I think that makes a difference in the cost as well.
And there's also a lower yield when you've got a higher elevation coffee. So you're not actually able to produce as much quantity when you've grown it at a higher elevation. So the energy, I guess, sort of gets, the way they think about it is the energy gets sort of distributed to less, coffee cherries, but more of it's gone to those few cherries. So there's sort of the idea of that, and the quality is there. But as far as like the varieties go, there is varietals. That's kind of where you get a lot of difference. So I think like there's kind of a handful of the originals. I think the most original variety of coffee would be like the heirloom variety in Ethiopia. We believe that's the birthplace of coffee, and I mean probably life itself, honestly. So
Thank you, Ethiopia.
yeah,
right.
So you'll find a lot of that, and there's a lot of diversity within that. So there's like this family's lived here on this has been their farm or just their property for a really 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 long time, and it's just the coffee that's grown there. So it's like I'll get bags, and the information we receive is like, this is the local variety, right? It's like, it's so diverse that, it sort of just depends on whose coffee it is. But where on the other hand, there's been, scientists who will work together to create specific varieties to withstand conditions. For instance, Kenya had a successful development of a variety called Ruri 11, and there's SL28 and SL34. This is years ago, but they needed something that could be drought resistant and insect repellent, but also have enough like of those really great flavors that we want from Kenya. They're able to just have a stronger export, a higher yield, and which is just good for the economy, obviously. So there's a lot of like science involved, and sometimes it's a matter of like, hey, I found this out in my field. Let's grow it, and specifically our El Salvador we have right now is Mergohipe is the variety. There's these giant coffee beans, like they're not like giant, but they're like
big for a coffee
They're
bean.
very large. It looks like goofy just how big they are. But anyways, the farmer we got this from discovered it. And now you can see it grown, from different farmers now. But
it was found the land that they like grow this coffee on is actually like on a volcano.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So I think 20 years ago, he just like found it and was like, oh, I'm going to start cultivating this more.
I want to make sure that besides the coffee itself, there is an aspect of the shop that I want to make sure we cover too, which is the fact that it is a vegan coffee shop. I think you guys may have introduced me to my first oat milk and cold brew, so thank you for that. I really dig that. It's very, very good, and your cold brew definitely has some power behind it to start your day for sure. But what is kind of different about running a vegan coffee shop? Because I start thinking of something like a latte, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, what foams like milk, etc. Anyway, but Jasmyn, tell me about it, because it's your shop.
Yes. So essentially, we as we were getting the shop ready to go, the original plan was to just kind of have it be like a quote unquote normal coffee shop. I was vegan and Jake was not, but as we were building it out, which is very funny how this happened. So long story short, the year that we were building out our shop was 2017, and Jake decided to go vegan that July. And I was like, oh my gosh, thank God. But also I was like, okay, does that mean our coffee shop can be vegan now? Because his thing was he wanted to totally lean into that third wave at the time, which was the most nerdy of the coffee.
It's just the specialty coffee.
Specialty.
Everyone, if you didn't serve your nice local whole milk, it was sort of just frowned upon. More so because there just weren't great alternative milk options at the time.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Yeah. So Jake agreed that yes, we can have a vegan coffee shop if we can find a milk that will work. That's going to like act like that. So we can still do that specialty coffee experience.
Yeah.
And hence went the search for that milk, right?
Aha.
And this was at a time where I know oat milk is very commonplace now, but at the
wasn't
time
then.
it was on the 20th page of Google. And we had to order it from like specifically Oatly from the website. It took like a month to get it. And we were like, okay, we're going to try this weird, obscure oat milk.
Yeah.
Because we had heard good things about it. And then let me tell you, we tried it with espresso and made a cappuccino and I cried because I was like, oh my gosh, this tastes like how I expect a whole milk latte to taste, but it's
Nice.
not, it's vegan. And then the more that I learned and the more we learned about oat milk, the more I just really loved it because we learned that it's just more sustainable for the soil versus like other alternative milks. Like it actually replenishes the nutrients. So it's a lot easier to grow. It uses less water. So there was just a lot of reasons to just love it. So that being said, we were like, okay, we're going to hit the ground running. We're going to like launch with oat milk, right?
Cool.
Yeah. And then it was just a matter of from there, like kind of finding partners to work with as far as like for baked goods, because we are not bakers. We don't specialize in that. We're the coffee nerds, right? So we, over the years, have been able to find people to work with, like Sweet Magnolia's Bake Shop has worked with us to make like vegan versions of their goods, which has been
'cause they
phenomenal.
you've had their vegan donuts at least at one point when I was
Oh no,
in there, so-
always. Yeah. And they're so popular. Yeah. And it's just amazing because she was a food scientist at ConAgra. So she knows how to formulate stuff to make your mouth water. It's incredible. And then, yeah, like we work with Veg Edible now because she has her storefront.
Oh, yeah,
So
I've had them on the show.
yes, yes, I know. Anyway, but like the reasoning behind going vegan, that's kind of like where it started. And the goal is just like, okay, like bringing vegan and specialty coffee together to create like this vegan specialty coffee experience.
Were there any other challenges that? Oh, I see a definite head nod there. What other challenges did you have in making it a vegan shop?
Well, okay, so it's kind of funny. So me as a human, I like to challenge social norms, and I find that I'm very comfortable doing that. And so, but coming like, I'm like, you just have to confidently put it out there and be like polite about it. And then like people are usually fine. And so, yes, when we first opened, I explaining the concept of like, yes, this is oat milk, like try it. And people being like, okay, I'm like, just try it, just trust me. And so there was a lot of like, because it wasn't like, not everyone had oat milk yet, so they weren't used to it. So we definitely had to kind of like be like, just try it. And then they're like, oh, this is really good. Like, so it was kind of like a lot of like teaching people about this weird milk, which is, I think, a unique experience that we had. And then there was a time where Oatly started to become more popular and it was like sold out and harder to get for a second.
Oh.
And so we had to have almond milk for 3 weeks. And then people were coming to our shop looking for the oat milk lattes and they would leave because we didn't have oat milk.
Oh.
Because that was when it started to become more popular in the US. So just things like that have happened. That's always been, it's just been like funny anecdotes. And then like when we released our reusable glass jar program, or when we started doing that, kind of a similar thing where it's like kind of just doing a paradigm shift.
Sure.
We were like, have this thing, and then people are like, what is this? And they're like, sometimes just like get confused and are like, wait, what? Like, what do I do with this? And the whole reason that we launched that was because people would get their drinks to go, but then they would drink the whole thing there. And I was like, well, this is silly. So we just have to not give people the option. And it's like, just try what we're doing. Same with like the oat milk. Like people are like, you should offer dairy. I'm like, that defeats the point of what we're doing here, you guys. And so it's like, you don't have to come here, but if you want to come here, like try what we made for you. Like come try this weird thing we made for you. Like make it an experience for yourself, because that's what it can be. But it's exactly what I want in a coffee shop. I'm like, I would be thrilled if I could like, if I was like, obviously maybe that is goes without saying, but I would love to be able to go to my coffee shop. If I was a guest, I'd be like, yes, this is my place. Like, thank you. But it makes sense because I made it.
We do notice, like, you know, the guests that are really excited about it are like, I love everything about this. And it's like, they found their people, you know, and ultimately it's this has really been about making a place that really honors the things that we care about, and things we want to share with people. It's like, we don't need to use, you know, disposable stuff. Like, we can go back to using glass and just be less wasteful, and also like highlight the experience. I feel like the coffee is so much better enjoyed on the go and in a non paper or plastic kind of cup. It just kind of is nice. And there's something nice about having the lid on top with Jasmyn's sticker adorning it, and just kind of adds to the experience. And I think it's just kind of everything that we wanted.
Bonus part about the lid too is it doesn't spill. It does not leak out of the top of the cup because
if it's in a cup holder.
Yes, yes.
If it's in a bike holder, the cup holder, it's like
Careful,
that's
though.
yes. No, but that's like I put a lot of research into this. It's that 63 millimeter. It's the size of a soda can, so it'll fit in those places where it needs to go. So there's been a lot of thought put into that. And again, it's a paradigm shift. So like sometimes people do get uncomfortable because they want that convenience. But I mean, that's kind of what I'm trying to challenge is like, have you considered that you could do this instead?
Yeah.
And I get it because it's like you're like, I don't know, like you get a drink somewhere and you're like, oh, just throw the cup away, whatever. And people just don't really think about it. But and then I get it. It's uncomfortable when you have to face it. When you're like facing this thing you're so used to doing comfortably and then being like, oh, wait. And so, yeah, some people love it. And then some people are really like, it just makes them glitch a little bit. They're like, what do I do with this? And I'm just like, well, it is what it is. And like, it's overall received like mostly positive feedback. And every once in a while, yeah, we get a few people that are not into it. And it's, I don't know, I think that just comes with the territory of like trying something that's a little bit abnormal. Because it is like trying something new. And, people don't always adopt that. But we have so many people bring their jars back in every day. Like
Absolutely.
it's so cute. Like I'm just like, yes, thank you for bringing those back.
We honestly weren't sure if it was going to work or not. Like I was with my band, our like little mini tour, and she calls me. She's like, hey, we're going to buy a whole pallet of these glass jars, just so you know. I was like, what? What are you talking about?
I called them. I'm like, I'm buying 2,000 jars. We're going to try this. Because I had seen, now we know them, we're friends. There's this coffee shop in Des Moines, Iowa called Horizon Line, and I saw them doing it, and I was like, oh, that's an idea. And so, seeing them do it, I was like, okay, this is possible. Let's try it. Like, let's see if it'll work. And like that was in September of 2019 when we first launched it. We had a month where we offered both, and then at the end of that month, we were just like, okay, take the cups here, and we donated them to I think like the homeless shelter, I think, actually.
Yeah, Sienna Francis House. Yep.
Oh, good.
So they were still getting used, but we're like, okay, so we're just going to remove these from our premises and just try this, so that way there's no looking back. And then it was just a matter of kind of teaching even like our team to be like, okay, don't be apologetic about this, because when you're apologetic, people think you're doing something wrong, and we're doing something good here, so be confident about it. Cool. And always giving people the option. Be like, do you want to drink it here? And if they're like, I don't want the jar, it's like, you can drink it here. Like, and they're like, it's just like reminding people that they have free will and they have a choice, I think is part of it too. It feels like playing a really funny video game.
Yeah, you learn things about yourself and people, and you just kind of change things. It's an interesting experience for us and for our baristas too. So, but it's all been really positive, and we love it. So,
importantly for our listeners out there, if they want to try Amateur Coffee, where are you guys? And also, if they want to see what's going on in the world of Amateur Coffee, how can they find you on the digital universe out there?
Yeah, so we are physically located in the Joslin Castle neighborhood next to St. Cecilia's Cathedral, like right around the corner at 3913 Cummings Street. We do have parking available in the back lot via the alley by Sweet Magnolia's Bake Shop, or the parking lot of the hardware store if you wrap around. Parking's tricky. Look at our website. Our website is amateurcoffee.com. And on there, you can take a look at what our current offerings are as far as what our seasonal drink menu is, what our current coffees are, bags of coffee, all of that good stuff is on there. And then we're also on Instagram and Facebook. So that is a great place to look at what we're currently up to. Instagram is at Amateur Coffee, and Facebook is at facebook.com/drinkamateur, or you can just look us up on there.
And I should have asked you this way earlier, and we're about to wrap up the show, but in a sentence or two, if possible, where did the name Amateur Coffee come from?
So amateur historically means actually lovers of. So it means lovers of coffee. It's the enthusiast who pursues their work in the spirit of love. And it was inspired by Austin Kleon's book, Show Your Work. And the chapter is called Be an Amateur. So highly recommend that book for any creatives out there.
That is a very succinct and fantastic summary of that. Wow, well done. Well, Jacob and Jasmyn Wichart of Amateur Coffee, thank you so much for being here. And thanks once again for your time.
Yes, thank you for having us.
Thank you.
I appreciate it very much. Well, as we say on the show, until we eat again or drink again, stay hungry. Bye-bye.
Our show is recorded and produced by Saturday Omaha. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, as well as email SaturdayOmaha@gmail.com. Thanks for listening and stay hungry.
Saturday Omaha.
Eat this.